Hi everyone. I hope you're doing well. I'm filming this almost at the end of May. I want to talk about some of the books I've been reading. One of the first books I want to talk about was an advanced reader copy of the new Rachel Cusk Parade. I mentioned before that I was buddy reading that with Nathan from Nathan's Nook. First, again, what a fun thing to do, and a cool book to do it with, because this book is broken down into 4 sections, not really chapters, standalone vignettes, mostly including an artist named G, but they're different artists. They just happen to all have the name G, capital G. And I was so happy to be back in Cuskland, but in a even more Cusky-esque Cuskland. Just leapfrogging or jumping from Outline Trilogy to this new thing. And because it's like that voice of the protagonist, but we never know anything about the protagonist. And in this case, I think it's always a we. And so that's what makes it so Cusky, is the we, but we don't ever turn around and the we never tells us about themselves, or, I'm not speaking about it very well. But we did a Zoom call or a FaceTime call last Friday, and I think Nathan's going to work that into a vlog, so you'll see more about it there, and I think it'll probably be more cogent. But I also think that not knowing very much about the book is a really fun thing, so just dive in and try it out. I think it's being published in mid-June. I'll put the publication date here. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's one that I'm going to buy a physical copy of and go back to it, because it's going to be such a delight to read it again. It has a lot of depth. Okay, why do I have these things in my hand? I don't need them right now, but I did start this book by Robert Plunkett, Love Junkie, and it is a first-person narrative. This was reprinted just now by New Directions, and I think it was originally published in 1990. This is not Robert Plunkett's most famous book. His most famous book is called My Search for Warren Harding. That is hailed by the New Yorker as one of the most original comic novels of the past 50 years. I've seen it in the library. I didn't pick it up yet, but maybe I'll have to. This is really fun. This is about Mimi, a modern day Emma Bovary, is a 40-ish suburban housewife looking for something to do, and she lands this secretarial job at an agency of some kind, and she makes friends with the guy that she's working for, but then all his friends, and they are a part of gay society in Manhattan and Fire Island. And it's just beginning. Like, I'm almost halfway through, but it's a delight. It is a perfect summer read. I don't know if it's going to get any heavier than it is right now. I think it's set in the 80s, even though it was written in the 90s or published in the 90s. Summer read. Yeah, really enjoying that. And I struggled so much to find like the next classic book I wanted to read. And I actually looked back. No, I was going to look back on that video I did of like the classics, 10 classics I wanted to read this year, which I guess it ended up turning out to be like the 10 classic authors I wanted to read. And I know that I haven't read a few, like Wilkie Collins, I think I'm saving for the fall, because I do think I'm going to try The Woman in White or something to that effect. Thomas Hardy, I have Far from the Madding Crowd, And I have Tess of the Dubervilles, and Tess of the Dubervilles is in really small print, so I don't know that I'll read my copy, but I haven't picked that up yet. You know who I did try? D.H. Lawrence, because I just picked up that D.H. Lawrence book. What's it called? Women in Love or something? And I didn't like the voice. I just couldn't get on with it, and I don't know that I can articulate why. But when I was at the library, I decided maybe what I needed was another Edith Wharton, and they had this one called The Reef. And I think this is one of her last books. It says, Edith Wharton was at the height of her enormous literary powers when she published The Reef in 1912. And everything about this novel suggests a mastery so complete that it can achieve nothing higher. The plot, which tells of the drastic effects of a casual sexual betrayal on the lives of 4 Americans in France, is expertly turned, suspenseful, continually compelling. And I have to say, I'm a little lost. This isn't as straightforward as a couple of the others that I've read, The Age of Innocence and that other one. But I'm going to keep on going because it's Edith Wharton, and I'm intrigued is all I can say. I can't even speak to what this is about yet, because I think in the parts that I've read up to page, oh, I'm only on page 20. They're still setting the scene, and there's a few characters, like it said, so I really can't speak to it yet, but I'm trying it. Let me know if you've read this one, what your thoughts were. And then the nonfiction that I put a hold on apparently a while ago, and it came in. I am really, really into this. It's called How to Think Like a Woman, which is like, what? I don't know. I don't want to read that. 4 women philosophers who taught me how to love the life of the mind. So it's got a weird title, but I guess what she's saying is, if you read the setup of the story, is that she got a PhD in philosophy and studied no women philosophers, which was a big surprise in her PhD program. So yeah, she was pretty depressed during her PhD, and she did her thesis on female philosophers. This is important because these male philosophers had a lot to say about the female mind, and of course of their time. Not all of them were positive. And I think that's how the book gets its name. I love the setup. She's telling her story. She's telling you about how she came up with the subject of her thesis, and then we in a very interesting way go into the 4 female philosophers, and I happen to be on the first one, and it's Mary Estelle, who lived from 1666 to 1731 and published a work called A Serious Proposal to the Ladies. This is so fascinating. This woman is such a trailblazer. This young woman, from a young age, she decided, I mean, just pure happenstance that she even learned how to read, because she was not wealthy. So one thing led to another thing, led to another thing. She ended up studying with her brother. I mean, I'm really captivated by this. Like, normally, it would be very easy for a book like this to be dry. It's not dry. It's so engaging. Like, this is where some of these books really, they easily lose me because they end up being too dry. This is not at all. Like, I'll just say one of the 4 women philosophers is Mary Wollstonecraft. Isn't that the mother of the woman who wrote Frankenstein? So cool cover. I'm really, really happy to be dug into a nonfiction. I read this first thing in the morning. It's really cool. And I just wanted to say a little bit about this new release because it came in for me at the library. And it's called Blue Ruin by Hari Kunzru. by Hari Kunzru. I have read the first chapter. You know how you get a couple new releases from the library and you just read, you start reading the first paragraph, and then I kept reading the first chapter. It really just pulled me right in. From one of the sharpest voices in fiction today, a profound and enthralling novel. Once Jay was an artist. After graduating from art school in London, he was tipped for greatness. That was not to happen. Now undocumented in the US, having survived a bout with COVID, he lives out of his car and barely makes a living as an essential worker delivering groceries. What captivated me is this book opens right in the middle of a scene. And some writers can do that really well. Even with the mask on, I recognized her at once. And then we go on to find out, as he's delivering groceries to someone's house, who he's talking about. Like snappy, sharp writing. Like, I'm so in this. I want to know more about Jay. I'm really interested in this author now. And he's written 6 previous novels. Let me know if you're reading this too. One of the things that Nathan asked me when we were on that call, right as we were ending, was like, what about your summer reading? And I didn't have anything to say because I don't plan my reading. But it got me thinking about the vibe of summer reading. And all I could remember was an answer to that question was that last year I started reading Bret, Easton, Ellis's The Shards. And I had it out from the library and it's over 600 pages. And I was really liking what I was reading, but I knew I wasn't going to get to it or keep going because I had too many books I was reading at the same time. So I returned it, but now it's out in paperback. And I've been thinking about picking up or is it coming out in paperback? I think it's out in paperback, maybe in another country, but I think I can get my hands on a paperback copy, probably used. And that's how I want to read it. So that might be something I do. I don't know. That's on my list. But I wanted to look back because I had a good summer of reading last year. And I was just interested, like, what was I reading? So that I could just mention some things for you. And because this is summer and it's a more laid back video, I don't think I'm going to put the covers of the books. So I'm sorry about that. I did read Middlemarch last year, which is my first George Eliot, but I read that and took it on a trip, a climbing trip. And it was a good book to travel with because once you get into the story, it's easy to follow and it's so engaging and it's so human. So I cared about the characters. So that's one that I would recommend. It's very, very good. And then something like summer vibey, like Emma Cline's The Guest. Remember that book from last year? There's a lot of mixed reviews and opinions about it, but I loved it. That to me was like summer vibe. And as far as another classic goes, I read The Awakening by Kate Chopin for the first time. Highly recommend that American classic novel. It's set in New Orleans, is it? It's in Louisiana, like hot, muggy. It's the summer. You could just feel and smell and see everything that Kate Chopin is talking about in that book. Perfect summer story. It's intense, but perfect summer story. And Whereabouts by Jhumpa Lahiri. Another like Italian woman just walking around trying to get over a broken heart in the beautiful Jhumpa Lahiri language writing. I would highly recommend that. And then the last one was a new book last year, Open Throat by Henry Hogue. LA, written in the voice of a mountain lion that lives above the Hollywood Hill, in the Hollywood Hills, above the Hollywood sign. Those are my top summer memories of reading last year. That's all I have to say about summer so far. Let me know what you're up to. Thanks for joining me. As always, I'd love to continue the conversation in the comments. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one.